All right, welcome everybody. It's September 18th, 5:33. We're going to call the Workforce Housing Task Force meeting together. Everybody has got the agenda, and thank you for sending everything out in advance, Daphne. That was super helpful. And just kind of looking at this, a lot of times we're looking at individual projects and kind of at things at the ground level. I think today are some of the larger zoning and planning documents that influence what we do in this on this committee. So it'd be nice to kind of take a look at what some of the amendments are. But the first thing we'll have to do is approve the minutes from July 17th. Everybody got a copy of those. Any edits or changes that anybody saw or wanted to suggest? Yeah, Lisa?
I just had one small edit. It's on, I guess, the last page of the minutes. It's a reference to Monona, talking about presentations we could have in the future. Monona would be great to hear from because they just recently decided to go this route with the extension of their TID closure. And they didn't just do it. They did it a while ago, which is why I think they would be good to hear from. I think they did it back when Brian Gatto was still city administrator.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else have any edits or comments on the minutes? Okay, then I would need a motion to approve the minutes. Does anybody like to make a motion?
This is Sam. I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
And I'll second the motion.
And Alan will second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm going to abstain just because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay. So it appears like the ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Okay. Moving right along. Probably the most exciting part of the agenda is to welcome Crystal to our committee. So I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, or maybe we should all introduce ourselves to you. What would work best for you?
I could give a quick intro.
Sure.
My name is Crystal. Yeah, I'm a student at Middleton High School, and I actually did a job shadowing under Abby Adden for a bit this summer, and she recommended me to apply for this position, which I did. And I look forward to working with you guys. So yeah.
Yeah. What year are you?
I'm a sophomore.
Nice.
So,
yeah. It's always great to have new faces on our committee, and we certainly appreciate you having. Why don't we just each briefly introduce it? So I'm Darren Fortney. I've been on the committee, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I lived here in Middleton for the past 20 some years. I'm an urban planner by profession, and I work over in Madison area on the west side. So nice to meet you. Should I just call on people? Lisa, do you want to?
Sure. Hi, Crystal. I'm Lisa Hanairo. I am the alder for District 6, which is on the north side. And I have been on this committee. Well, I guess this is my second meeting. I was just appointed this year. So welcome.
I'm not sure if is Amy, are you available to at least speak, or? I believe so. We're gonna go down to Sam.
Hey, Crystal. Sam Adams. A couple of years on workforce housing. Live here in Middleton with my family, 2 kids, 5 and 8, and I work in tech startup. Work on a couple of tech startups. Thanks.
And Randy.
Hi, Crystal. This is my first meeting, although I was on the Workforce Housing Committee prior to this and have a year or 2 experience with it. I also sit on the Plan Commission, and I'm a retired architect.
Daphne, if you had a chance, I'm assuming you've had a chance to meet Crystal, but maybe not. Do you want to?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I met Crystal while she was job shadowing with Abby. Yeah, I'm Daphne. I work with the city. I've been here now for 4 years. And yes, just started helping to staff workforce housing this year. So
Awesome. Heather, you're next on my screen.
Hi, Crystal. I'm Heather. I've been on the committee for maybe a little less than a year, and I've lived in Middleton for about a year, so I'm pretty new to all of it. I work from home actually for a company that's based out of Santa Monica, California. Nice to meet you.
Alan, you're up.
I'm Alan. I've lived in Middleton for 8 years, moved to the Madison area like 14, 15 years ago. And wanted to put down roots in Middleton and been on the committee for a year and work at Epic down in Verona.
Awesome. Ben, are you available or around yet? Well, there he is. Ben, you might be on mute.
I was on double mute, even it looks like. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is Ben. I've been third year on the committee, been in town for about 15 years, and currently have a junior at the high school.
Very good. And last, Sean. Sean, are you available?
Sure. Let me turn on my camera here. Hi, I'm Sean Paff, and I am just an interested citizen. I also do some work for the Apartment Association of South Central Wisconsin, and we're interested in the zoning code rewrite and just kind of interested in what your committee does as well. I live in Fitchburg. I used to be the mayor of Fitchburg, so I thank you folks for serving on a city committee. It is not easy, and appreciate what you do, and I'd love to hear the conversation and maybe, Mr. Chair, on item number 3, if there's room for some comment, I would love to make a few comments if that's part of the agenda. If not, I'm just happy to listen.
Daphne, what is the, I've actually never had anybody attend our meetings yet, so I don't know what the protocol is. But thank you, Sean, for sitting in. It's always
Sure,
nice to have
no
people
problem.
join us. So.
I'll defer to you guys, of course.
Yeah, so since this is not a public hearing, we don't allow any public comments, but you are welcome to send in your comments and anything you have to city staff, and I can also send it out to our workforce housing committee members as well.
Sure, and I have a good working relationship, Daphne, with Mark Opitz and stuff, so I appreciate that. And I'm happy to listen, Mr. Chair. Thank you for letting me introduce myself. Good luck with your meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sean.
May I also mention that there are workshops planned, several of them. So
Correct.
yeah, okay.
I'm going to go to the one on October 9th, I believe, as well. So thank you. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for sitting in. Okay, well, again, why don't we move to agenda item number 2, which is the draft comp plan amendment, including future land use map. Daphne, I wonder if you could just kind of give us an overview of what time frame our comp plan update is looking to achieve, and then maybe if you can highlight some of the changes or areas for feedback.
Yeah, so this is we kind of go through updates every year to our comprehensive plan. It is our 20-year kind of planning document, but as things progress and as the city grows, we also make amendments to keep that comp plan fresh and relevant to the city. So this is our second amendment because it was adopted in 2021, so we are doing these amendments each year. And so, there's some things where it's just like minor text changes. We refer it out to committees because, especially with workforce housing, we have a whole housing chapter. So if anything, is relevant to the workforce housing committee that they would like to add or change to the chapter, they're welcome to do so during this time as well. We have a public hearing on, this whole amendment at our next Plan Commission meeting on September 26th. And so, all of those changes that, this committee recommends and any other committee recommends will be, presented at that meeting. There are a couple future land use map, designation changes, and some of them were mistakes that, we have like a single family unsewered zone like category. And so we're getting rid of all of those within the city because there are no, properties that can be unsewered in the city. And so there are quite a few of those that are being changed, and then just some wording here and there that's marked up in red. And And so I can bring up, any part of the comp plan that you guys want to look at, the future land use map and all of that as well.
Yeah, I was giving this some thought. I mean, two of the logical corridors that I think, might affect workforce housing seem to be like Parmenter and then obviously University Avenue with some of the redevelopment opportunities there. Is there anything you could walk us through on either of those two corridors?
Yeah, I don't actually think there have been any major changes to our flu map in those
Okay.
areas. Most of University Avenue, west of Park Street or east of Park Street, is zoned, or not zoned, but this is like a category of avenue mixed use. And so that allows mixed use, and it also allows the commercial.
Okay.
I believe, most of our areas with it, east of the Beltline, we've kind of gotten rid of just the, general business districts that's like only commercial, only, retail, stuff like that, and changed it to a mixed use designation.
Okay. And how about Allen Boulevard? Obviously,
Yeah.
there's a lot of activity going on there, I understand. So
Yeah.
were there changes there?
Yeah, so the biggest change is this one parcel down here. If you can see, it's the soccer fields. And so that actually in our previous flu map was one of those designated as single family unsewered. And that was a big mistake by the city, obviously. And so we brought this discussion to the Plan Commission before, and they recommended avenue mixed use on the western half and then established neighborhood on the eastern half, just to give it more of a buffer with those homes on Middleton Beach Road. The way that it's split up right now, it's like majority avenue mixed use and established neighborhood is like that tiny little sliver, if you can see it there. And that was just, I just went in there arbitrarily and drew that line to be, that's basically the lot depth of a standard, single family lot in Middleton. So that was, how I did it. But if you guys have any, discussion or, comments on what you would like to see there, that's certainly something we can talk about.
So is the point of this agenda to just get is there a product that is being put in front of us, or where are we at in the process from an agenda perspective of what are we looking to do here? Just realize that this is going on and offer any comments, or?
Yeah. So if you had the chance to review the housing chapter, and if you think, any of those actions are, relevant or maybe not as relevant, we'd love to hear those comments. There is also, I believe, a spreadsheet of all of the changes that we had proposed. So these are all, the major changes that are going into this amendment. So if you had time to look over some of that and give any feedback, that would be great.
Anybody have any comments or thoughts?
I just had a comment that I saw the stuff in red relating to children, and I think that refers to daycare, and just having 2 kids graduate from daycare and know how much that costs. And I think it's great that is, I don't know if that's on the agenda for workforce housing, but perhaps it should be, just to consider the cost of daycare here in Middleton as kind of an aspect of workforce housing.
Yeah. And Sam, do you remember where you saw that daycare? Was it in the housing chapter? If you can.
There's
Red
rising
text?
Policy change H2 in the Middleton's rising housing costs have made it difficult for families, especially those with young children, to afford living in Middleton. It's in the summary. on page 3 in the copy of the 2023 amendments.
Right here, I think.
It's lower down. Right there. Page 5 at the bottom. Yeah, and I think it's noted in the document as well. The part about families and the cost of care.
Yeah, and then probably likewise the ability to, retain some of the workers that are employed there in our own community, I guess. Any other comments? So everything that has changed is really in red then, Daphne?
Yeah,
May-
so, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna ask about the comment Sam just brought up. So reading the text, I don't take from learning centers necessarily daycare. So I wonder if we want to add that to the list. Because the amenities for kids, the play spaces and the learning centers, that might not be read as childcare. So I think it might be a good idea to add that to it.
Yeah, definitely.
I like that idea. And I'm sorry, the text is way too small for my eyes. I can't find a zoom unless there's a zoom on here, but are there mention of certainly they're difficult for families to have daycare, but then I'm talking specifically about the workers of daycare and for them to be able to find affordable housing in our community. Is this just talking about the cost of daycare? So, that makes it challenging for a family to move here, but specifically to the workers of daycare, I mean, that's equally as challenging for them to, work for relatively small wages and then have to, commute from other communities to even be able to, make that work.
I don't know if I have any specific recommendations to address it, but yes, it is challenging for daycare workers to live in Middleton. It's challenging for them to get to the existing facilities that are here because of reduced transit options and the fact that there, aren't bike lanes throughout all the commercial space that we have and industrial space that we have, but I'm not sure what we would recommend.
Yeah, I think the other one that I had pointed out here, page 5 up here, it kind of addresses it, but it's only really geared towards first-time home buyers. And so the city has the clause, the sentence at the very end that's like, focusing towards like younger families and kind of boosting the like the school district, stuff like that. So that is kind of one aspect of it, getting younger families with kids in Middleton, because it's getting, pretty expensive for those families to buy and own in Middleton as well. And so there are a couple other, strategies and actions in the comp plan that can address, specifically like affordable housing for, our workers.
Okay. Anything else from anybody with respect to the comp plan amendment?
I had a couple of comments regarding Daphne, can you go back to I guess the map I'm thinking of is the zoning one. So the Allen Boulevard property does have, right now it's proposed to be split between the avenue mixed use avenue, I think, and then also multi-family residential, low density zoning is what's
Yes.
showing on the.
Yes.
But if you look at the dwelling units per acre, so the dwelling units per acre for multifamily residential low density is up to 8 dwelling units per acre. And that is right next to what is currently or planned to be zoned as single family homes, high density, correct?
Yes.
And that is 14 dwelling units per acre. And then the avenue, I don't even know what the avenue is, but I'm gonna guess it's more than 8 dwelling units per acre. So I'm wondering why is that buffer there? Why not multi-family residential medium density, which is 20 units?
Yeah, so that so what I have on the screen right now is the draft zoning map. So this came out a little bit later than you know, the ordinance that I had sent to the rest of the committee members, but this is now live. It's on the city's website. You can find it yourself, and you can like click around and it'll tell you, you know, all the different zoning, the future ones, and our proposed zoning. So yeah, so what Lisa was saying is, you know, this area, the way that we had kind of, you know, translated future land use into this proposed zoning was just like kind of through this translation table. So basically all established neighborhood we assign to either single family low, medium, high, or multifamily residential low. And so that's just kind of how it was assigned. And then, you know, we took a look at lot sizes and all of that. And so this is an interesting dilemma because this, you know, it doesn't really have a lot size that we can assign it, just because it's kind of up in the air right now. But because based on the translation table, we had said up to multifamily residential low density, that's kind of what we had assigned it, if that makes sense, Lisa, to answer your question. So yeah, but that's definitely something, you know, when we look at the future land use table. So the zoning map, you know, we took the translations from the future land use table. So if we look at this future land use table or this map, you know, we have it as established neighborhood, but maybe, you know, workforce housing could recommend, you know, we want it to be multifamily residential instead. And so then this little sliver of yellow, which is kind of hard to see, would be brown instead for multifamily, if that's something the committee is interested in doing.
Okay.
Well, if I could just jump in here, you brought up something, Lisa, that I think was similar to my thoughts a little bit about the multifamily low density at 8 units an acre is just does not, I don't think meets our needs, the community needs anymore. I think that density is, you know, like we can see, is lower density than single family housing. So I think there should be some discussion or some thought in terms of just increasing the density of the low density housing to allow both higher density and larger buildings as well. We're using unit count for building size, and units are getting smaller now to become more so that they can be more affordable. So, you know, more units are placed in the same envelope, building envelope that used to contain, you know, fewer units. So I think there's some logic to allowing both higher densities and larger building sizes in the low multifamily low. And I think that there's some thought that maybe even in the medium density that we need to look at those densities as well to allow a little bit more flexibility.
That's a good point. We can revisit this in our next agenda item when we talk about the zoning ordinance. So it is a little confusing because it's the future land use, but then, right now with the zoning ordinance, they're very intertwined. So, yeah, but we'll try and focus on just the comprehensive plan and the future land use for now.
Okay, and then I did have one more comment, and it's going to sound confusing as well, but this is in response to the CARPC memo, and it's about the comprehensive plan language changes. So I'm going to bring it up now. And it's on page 15 of the document. Last paragraph, it says, talks about the need to apply an equity lens to the issue of housing supply and demand to make sure that people aren't displaced, especially people of color, families with lower incomes. And it said the city can and should consider policies and programs aimed at mitigating this eventuality. And I'm wondering, A, are there things in the comp plan that can be tweaked to get at that point? B, does CARPC have any recommendations for policy changes? And C, would allowing single family zone districts to have 2-family and even low density multifamily housing achieve or be one of those policies? Because that we'll talk about this in the zoning code rewrite. One of my biggest concerns is that the single family housing designation is so restrictive that you can put a boarding house in, but you can't put a 2-family home in, like a duplex or a 2-flat. And I don't see the value of that. I think if if someone's got a house in a neighborhood of single family homes and would like to turn that into, or demolish it and put up a 2-flat or even a 4-flat, why would we discourage them from doing that? Somebody could buy a duplex in a neighborhood that's zoned for that, tear it down and put up a much larger single family home. Why would we encourage that and discourage the former? So
yeah, I think in terms of the comprehensive plan, one of our key policy decisions when we first created the future land use map was we're not going to say single family anywhere within the city other than the few mistakes that we had. And so we created this established neighborhood which allows up to 2 to 3 units. And so we put all the single family, it's that yellow color that you see on the future land use map. So all of the yellow, all of the single family homes that we have in, that we established in the future land use map, we said it's established neighborhood, which allows 2 to 3 units instead of just, having that strict single family designation. And so that way, when we translated it, into the zoning map, there were some locations where we had, 2 families, and then we allowed up to that multifamily residential low density. And so that's kind of related to what you were asking, Lisa, but I definitely do think the comprehensive plan has more spaces where we can include that DEI perspective, including, people of color and other incomes. But yeah, I think we would have to take a look at specific actions to see where we could increase that kind of language.
So Daphne, following up on Lisa's comments, so we have a lot of currently single family housing that's designated in the comp plan as established neighborhood.
Yes.
But then the zoning is going to overlay and create single family zoning in those districts.
So as you can see, everything here yellow, this is our future land use map. Everything yellow is established neighborhood, which allows up to 2 to 3 units. So you can see that that's where all of our single family homes are. In our first draft of our zoning map, we basically just did it by lot size, whatever was high density is, most of Middleton Beach Road we designated as high density because they have, really small, narrow lots. And so that was just kind of like the direct translation based off of lot size.
So what happens if after the zoning is in place, somebody wants to in a single family lot, a single family zone lot, if they want to put up a 2-unit or a 3-unit or subdivide their, how does that require rezoning then?
Yeah, so if they wanted to, as in Lisa's example, you know, tear down a single family to put up a duplex, they would have to probably rezone to 2-family. But because the future land use map shows, you know, 2 to 3 units as, you know, acceptable, you know, the plan commission can decide off of the future land use map, you know, hey, this, you know, is an accepted, you know, use in our future land use map. So that could be, you know, their determination to allow the rezoning. But yeah, I think Lisa does make a good point where, you know, in 2-family districts, we can allow single family homes, but in single family, like it's not, I believe it's not even a conditional use to get a 2-family. So,
Right,
you know,
it's
there,
not.
right. Yeah. So there's like no, you could get like an accessory dwelling unit or something like that, but there's no way to put a duplex on a single family lot.
So, and is that, has there been any discussion of allowing 2 or 3-unit buildings in the single family districts, maybe by conditional use?
Not yet, but we can certainly have that discussion now.
Well, I know Minneapolis has gone through this. They've eliminated their single family zoning entirely in an attempt to bring, you know, a more inclusive built environment.
Randy,
I know the appetite for that in our community. I mean, it seems like maybe what we're proposing is a middle way to say established neighborhood is automatically zoned for 2 to 3 units without a conditional use permit, because we don't need that barrier to it. Instead of just the no more single housing, like that's kind of one end of it.
Right.
I think designating all the existing neighborhoods as max 3 units, that might be a good proposal from this committee.
Yeah, I agree. And this is also, you know, going back to the zoning again. So we can maybe bring that up again when we move to the next agenda, which I mean, if there are no more comments on the comp plan and the future land use map, we can certainly move to the next.
Yeah, do we need to table this or and then move on to the next agenda item and then bring it back up, or just put this one to bed and move on to the zoning, since that's where we think most of the changes might come in?
Yeah, I think we can, I mean, if you know, the daycare discussion was, I think, a really good and important, you know, addition. You don't have to make a motion to, you know, recommend that, but you certainly can as a committee. And then, you know, if there are no more comments on comprehensive plan, we can move on to zoning and pick up with the zoning again.
Yeah, I'll make the motion in the zoning topic, but if there's nothing else, I'll move to close discussion on this one and move to the next.
I did have one more question for Daphne, and that is just about the relationship between the future land use map and the zoning district map, because it's not clear to me, Alan, that the change you suggested can happen unless we do change something in the zoning code rewrite to allow the 2-family or low density multifamily housing. So what will happen to the future land use map, Daphne, when the zoning code rewrite is done?
Yeah, so this still, you know, is our basis. It's still, you know, our 20-year, you know, vision for the city. And so it is a little bit confusing since, you know, the zoning map, you know, should also kind of hold all of the vision of the city as well. And so basically, how we used it, you know, before with our current zoning as it is right now is, you know, you know, if anyone wants to make changes to their property or develop a property, and, you know, they want to rezone it, we would look at this future land use map, you know, to see if, you know, that's something we would want in that location. So for plan commissioners, you know, when we looked at, you know, Middleton Shores, it was zoned multifamily residential, but like super low density. And so we looked at our future land use map and said, you know, it is zoned for multifamily residential, and, you know, multifamily residential designation has, you know, this kind of, you know, description. And so if they wanted to exceed, you know, heights of 5 stories, they could get a conditional use permit and all of that. So we use the future land use map to make that designation for Middleton Shores. Right now it's interesting because as basically we're using this future land use map to create our new zoning map with the new designations. And so we're still looking at this map as, you know, the basis. And so when we create our new zoning districts with the new zoning ordinance, we're still going to base it largely off of this future land use map, just because, you know, this was the vision that, you know, we had for our city. And so then going forward, you know, they should be, you know, relatively the same with the future land use map and our new zoning map. Yeah, basically, you know, going forward, they should be, you know, relatively similar. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, are we ready to move to the next agenda item to talk about the zoning ordinance?
It certainly sounded like it.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's move on the agenda.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up right now. This is our kind of the page that you would see if you're, so for example, say your property was zoned in the new zoning to single family high density residential. So as I mentioned, you know, most of Middleton Beach Road is this designation. It's mostly based off of lot size right now, just because, you know, they have really skinny, small lots. And, you know, so they do have a lot more units in there. As Lisa mentioned, you know, they have, you know, generally 14 dwelling units per acre is what we're estimating for, you know, single family high density residential. Under number 2, these are permitted uses. So, you know, by right, if anyone wants to, you know, build something on an SRH designation, they can do this, you know, with very little review by me. I just have to make sure they follow the setbacks, and then they'll be good to go. And then under number 3, these are conditional uses. So if we create certain conditions, you know, they might have additional setbacks or, you know, additional rules or regulations they have to follow. And if they follow those, they can apply for this conditional use. And as Lisa mentioned, you know, 2 families, even three unit, you know, multiplexes are not even conditional uses here in our single family district. So that is certainly something that we can add either to the conditional uses, or as Alan mentioned, just add them as a permitted use by right.
Thinking about this, I think in my mind, putting them as a conditional use makes some sense. It allows for some review and discussion of what's going to happen, and would at least involve other neighbors having the opportunity to at least be part of the process and not be surprised by it.
I could support that. I wonder, could we do the same thing for the other residential districts, but put the single family dwelling unit as a conditional use, because I am concerned. I grew up in a town that went through a whole period of tear downs. And I'm just thinking, why not have parity, so that if you have a neighborhood that's zoned for two families, and so it's maybe they're not as high value properties, they're older. Would we really want to encourage people to start purchasing those properties, tearing them down and putting up bigger homes than they can get in a different neighborhood? So is that something the committee would consider for the multifamily and two-family residential zones, to put the single family dwelling unit as a conditional use?
And Lisa, it's your thought that you just don't want to see lower the densities to drop?
Yep.
Of course, we have that throughout the zoning code. In almost every case, you can do a lower density development.
Right, and that's right for residential, definitely, and that's what I'm saying. If it's a conditional use, at least that's some discussion related to, I think, the policy of trying to preserve density where it's at now, if not increase it.
Yeah, so I brought up our two-family duplex zoning district. And so basically, Lisa, you would want to see this move down into a conditional use here instead.
That is a suggestion, yes.
And then my I guess my comment related more to when you get into the multifamily districts or the mixed use districts. We've got a maximum, principal uses permitted by right. All of those single family, duplex, twin house, two flats, all those. Do those become conditional uses as well?
That's a good question. Daphne, what do other municipalities do? I mean, I know this code is based on other municipalities because that's what the consultant did.
I mean, in a lot of these, there does come a point where they get rid of that single family at least. And so I can see how in, this designation specifically, multifamily, residential, urban, single family at least, like definitely, single family and maybe duplex are not, what you would consider an urban, design fabric, included in that. So, striking at least those two from it. And then, with twin houses and two flats, you can still kind of see some of those in urban scale cities. So, that it might just be, kind of a design perspective of, what you want to see, how the actual form of the building looks to, what is stricken from either location. But usually when we look at like, here, let me pull it up. It is a little confusing to look at first, but planners will usually look at this, the land use chart, and we'll see like this is permitted, PPP, all the way down. And then, as the densities increase, you would see, some of the single families would disappear in, say, like the mixed use designations. And so, if you wanted to change some of these permitted uses to conditional uses, Cs, I think that's definitely something. It differs from by community and where that change happens. So that's definitely something we can discuss.
Lisa, I'm a little concerned that we don't want to make the changes so broad that they end up, rewriting large sections of the code. Your comment regarding having some fairness to the code, and that that we'd make single family uses conditional use in duplex zoning makes a lot of sense to me, just like we would make the duplex use in a single family zoning a conditional use. So that totally makes sense. And I want to just bring up the point about the multifamily zonings and what is now permitted in them. But I don't know that I want to wholesale try to rewrite, those sections.
I'm trying to figure out what the specific proposal is going to be, but I think what we're saying is make duplexes and twin houses either conditional or permitted in at least the single family high density, potentially the single family medium density, and then making a conditional single family conditional in the multifamily categories.
Lisa, do you have any thoughts on that?
If by multifamily, you mean the two family and multifamily,
Oh yeah,
Alan?
yeah.
Then yes, I think captured that.
Is it? I would like the single family high density to just permit duplexes and twin houses outright. I don't see a reason to put a conditional on that one.
I guess my thought would be to make all the single family, since they're all the single family zoned parcels right now in the future land use map show established neighborhood and up to 2 or 3 units. And my thought would be to just the single family zoning would be duplex, twin homes, 2 flats would be conditional use in all of those. And yeah, that's it.
Conditional or principal?
I would support conditional. A permitted use. I'm a little nervous about permitted use only because I'm not sure. Honestly, I just don't know that our community is ready for it. And having the ability to have projects see the light of day before they happen, I think would be beneficial.
Something I was wondering is about from a profit incentive standpoint, if there's really projects for people who want to build, say for example, single family homes in more dense areas, because I don't know if they would sell as well, or if people if those projects are even in the works. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I think when I have seen those instances, those are families that are going to, they're going to build their own home versus like a builder building it and then trying to sell it. So, their individual pro forma cost benefit is going to probably drive that versus a builder building a home and then trying to sell it in that area. I keep thinking of that, the property that's on Century that was the tear down that got condemned, just kind of watching that parcel there to see what might go in there and who might take a project on in an area like that.
Mhm.
So was there discussion about, and I think you have it highlighted on the screen, Daphne, is like single family homes are permitted in just about all of these residential categories as permitted. And I guess what we're talking about is the fears that we would be taking multifamily or 2-family opportunities away for somebody that wants to put a single family home there. And then that multifamily opportunity is now gone because of the single family home. Is that
Yeah.
what I heard? We were talking about taking single family. I'm just trying to back up, try to organize this a little bit.
Yeah, we can chunk it
Back to
out.
the
I think the first motion is for these highlighted categories right here, switching them to the principal to the conditional use so that single family homes go through the conditional use process.
Yeah, at least there's some discussion, but it's not simply permitted use by right.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the first proposal. I don't know if I can do two at once or.
Why don't we do one at a time? So is that a motion then, Alan?
Yep.
Okay. So Alan's motion, just to summarize here, is to take the single family permitted use out of everything from 2-family residential duplex all the way through
Mixed use neighborhood is.
yeah, and to put that as C as conditional. Is there a discussion on that motion?
I'm just wondering. Okay, never mind. I was gonna say the mixed use avenue and urban,
They do not have single family.
they do not. Okay, yeah, I can't scroll fast enough. Okay, I don't have any questions.
So that implies that single family is not workforce housing. If we're looking at this from the lens of workforce housing, your assumption is that as a workforce housing committee, we're trying to make more accommodation for multifamily and duplexes. So getting rid of single family is beneficial.
I think it's more that driving towards more density because we have less of the open. We're becoming more land constrained than I think we were in years past. So changing the zoning code to be more favorable to higher density, more units on existing development is what we want to try and do.
So if somebody were to, I don't know what you can build a house for these days, but I'm guessing not. I mean, taking the property aside, but I'm assuming, probably $350,000 to $400,000, which is probably not workforce housing, but that's entry level in Middleton, which would be great. But to get more affordable entry level homes, but at that time we're also taking away multifamily opportunities where 3 or 4 other families might have been able to live in some sort of dwelling on that same property. But now we have an entry level home there. That's probably going to be $400,000, which is probably not workforce housing. That's,
My perspective is that we need to provide as many opportunities to build additional housing units as possible to help just temper the rise of costs generally. So the more housing that we allow to be constructed, the more affordable everything becomes, including the affordable properties.
and they still would be able to, it would just become a conditional use, which would be, there would be a lot more discussion on it versus just, it's got a P in the box and it's permitted. And I guess my fear is that if there is a multifamily duplex site that can accommodate 2 families, 4 families, whatnot, by allowing a single family home there at $400,000, it's going to take those opportunities and going to take that density away for the next 100 plus years. Which is, it's great. I'm all for people building single family homes and, more urbanized areas. I mean, I think that's great, but it's also taking affordable housing away at the same time.
And for my minutes, did someone second it? Sorry, I might have missed it.
No, we're still discussing.
No, yeah.
Okay.
So again, it's the motion is to take these permitted uses for single family and the ones that Daphne has highlighted and put those to conditional use, which would still be allowed. It would just be a slightly different process to get it approved. Is that essentially
I'll
what
se-
the motion?
yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay. So Alan had the motion, Randy seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the motion carries. Okay,
I think my second motion would be for at least the single family residential high density that we permit duplexes, twin houses, and 2 flats. And again, the idea here is if we want to do a tear down and do a duplex on a existing single home site, that we make that easy. I think certainly at minimum, it should be a conditional use.
right. Can somebody give me, or Daphne or anybody else from the committee, give me an example of where in Middleton we have the high density single family, just so we can all kind of put that in perspective.
Or maybe it's the opposite that I want, the low, where the lots are bigger, we can put the multi-families on.
Yeah, so yeah,
It's
so
confusing
here's
because
our,
it's like the existing neighborhood, but
yeah, that's a good point, Alan. So for high density single family, that's Middleton Beach Road, and then a lot of the lots in like near downtown, the single family homes near downtown, are single family high density just because the lots are really small. A lot of those houses don't even have space for, you know, a garage or single car garage, because they're so small. So those
Is that
are a lot
basically
of,
Elmwood and Hubbard?
yeah,
Is that
this is
what we're looking
Mhm.
at? Okay,
Yeah, Elmwood is here, and then Hubbard is here. You know, and then this area is downtown area. And then you can see this more, I don't know, just regular yellow. This is single family medium density. And then
okay,
this
that's
tail one up here is low density. So you can see the lot sizes between these two are a little bit more similar, but low density definitely has the larger lots.
yeah. So I want the opposite, not in the high density ones, but the low and medium density that we permit the duplexes and
And why not on the high density?
I don't know what else you're gonna fit on there, but yeah, I guess we could do them all.
Yeah, I will note that, you know, also downtown, we have this orange color right here. And this is, I believe it's 2 family flats. And so, you know, those are kind of, if you know, think of Elmwood, you know, they have a lot of those old homes that are a little bit bigger. They're, you know, Victorian, some of them are Victorian-esque homes. And those are, you know, 2 or even 3 units. And, you know, they split, you know, the first floor is 1 unit, the second floor is another unit. So that is also, you know, an option with some of these smaller lots. They can build, you know, a house and then split, you know, by the height, to have 2 units. So that is an option for, you know, the higher density single family.
can we go back to the table, Daphne, and then Alan, can you just walk us through what
Yeah.
it's not a motion at this point, but what your idea is, so it can,
So for
I think it's
the-
clear when we have this matrix up. I think it makes a lot of sense to me.
Definitely. So knowing that the density is largely the lot size, all those single family designations, we would permit basically everything in the 2 family residential duplex. 1, 2, 3.
So duplex, twin house, and 2 flat. You would like to permit also in all 3 single family Alan, low, medium, and high.
Yeah,
And Alan, are you saying as a permitted use or as a conditional use?
I think permitted use, but if there's not an appetite for it, I think conditional is, I'd be agreeable to.
Yeah, I would be a little uncomfortable putting it as permitted personally. Um, I think the conditional gets the intent across that of, I think what we're trying to do. But that's just my perspective is putting it as a permitted use in a single family low density seems a little aggressive from my perspective. But I would support a conditional on those.
And I think the conditional use at least puts the zoning code more in alignment with the land use map.
With the translation of the existing neighborhood.
Well, the land use map calls out established neighborhood, which allows 1, 2, or 3 unit buildings on them. So, so I would say putting a conditional use to allow those things would make sense to me.
And it seems to mirror what the First Amendment, where we took it and we put from permitted to conditional. It seems to kind of then mirror that same methodology in those single family categories. Just say, it could, but it would have to be conditional.
Right.
And with conditional use, Daphne, can you explain, is there a lot more public input, neighbors, meetings, all types of?
Yes, so if someone wants to apply for a conditional use, they have to submit an application to us, and then there is a public hearing, and that is heard at Plan Commission, and then Plan Commission would have the ultimate say in approving or denying something.
So by us putting that in conditional, that if there was a proposal that might be a little unconventional, right? Because typical single family low density, now you're talking about putting a duplex or 2 flat, which I think is a good opportunity, but it's not necessarily flat out just permitted. It's meant for discussions, more public input, public hearing, to see if that particular instance would be acceptable, an acceptable use, along with neighborhood input, I guess.
Lisa, do you have any thoughts?
I'm willing to go either way. I would like to see it as a permitted use, but I respect the sentiment that our community might not be ready for it, even though I wish we were. So I could accept conditional.
Sam, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'd be interested to hear what's running around in your head if you're willing to share.
Oh, I think conditional makes sense.
And to clarify, what we recommend would need to get approved by council, right?
So if this is changed to conditional, it wouldn't need to be approved by council, just by Plan Commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's same if it was made primary.
Right. And I think, I'm more of an incrementalism type of person, and I'm trying to move the bar in the right direction without going so far that then we end up with nothing, meaning no changes. Right. So that's another reason why I kind of like the conditional category. It seems like a little bit of a more of a incremental step versus, the long pass that may get shot down by Plan Commission, and then we end up with, really no forward movement from how things were 40 years ago or 50 years ago, or even right now, I guess.
Yeah. Agreed. I think this is going to be a big enough ask as it is, to tell you the truth.
Be the longest Plan Commission meeting ever, I bet.
I was just wondering, would the aesthetic or like character of a neighborhood be a question if we change like the type of building that's there?
Yeah, that's a good question, Crystal. So that is, since it, if it becomes a conditional use, that's certainly something we can add to the ordinance, put a condition like, the duplex or the twin house has to, kind of at least still take on the form of a single family home. I'm sure you've seen, a bunch of those coming up around Madison and in Middleton. It is a duplex, but you couldn't really tell until you see, the other side of the building or something like that. So that can be added as a condition.
Yeah, it would have to fit, within the context of the neighborhood, as you said, Crystal. And at some point, if some of these duplexes are listed as conditional, likely we're not talking about workforce housing at this point. We're talking about increasing density, which is good. But somebody dropping a brand new duplex in a single family residential low density area, that's not going to come cheap, right? I mean, now you're probably talking $600,000 to $900,000, and the turnaround on rent on something like that is we're not talking workforce housing. We're talking about just potential of increasing density in our community with some of these moves, I think.
But it would, I think it would allow someone to take a larger home and perhaps remodel it to allow for, 2 independent living units.
Sure.
Which one of which could be certainly affordable.
That's a good point.
Yeah, 5-story house with a 60% median income rental unit in there. Did we get clarification on the language for the height for additional units if there were affordable units in there? If it's 50% of the total space versus 50% of the additional space?
Yes, we did. And it is apparently it is following Madison's, and Madison is 50% of the additional floor.
Okay.
So yeah, so if that one additional floor has 8 units, they would have to have at least 4 units be affordable, and then the whole building could have total of 50 something units.
So just get back to your point, Crystal. So if it was a conditional use, it's going to go through the ringer of the plan commission, which is going to look at everything like aesthetics and landscaping and parking and how it fits in, to make sure that if something like that is approved, that it's going to fit, architecturally, it's going to, aesthetically, landscaping, it's going to fit within the context of that neighborhood. So you're just not, taking a square peg and putting it in a round hole and like, oh, it looks great. No, it doesn't look great. You know what I mean? So that's the job of the plan commission, to make sure that all that aesthetic compatibility is really looked at in detail. Okay. Any other discussion, or do people feel like they might be ready for a motion, or I don't want to jump into a motion too quickly if there's other thoughts. But right now we're talking about taking some of those other, what were the ones we were talking about? It was 2 flat.
Yeah, duplex, 2 flat, twin house. Basically the ones that are in that TRE category, and moving them over to conditional for the single family residential.
Or the low, medium, and high.
Yep.
We're dropping
I
those
think-
3. So we're taking those 3 and making them C's in a 3x3 square right there. So we'd be putting 9 C's under. Yep, exactly where Daphne is showing us. You know, and I think most of part of it's an educational thing. If people don't, if they're not familiar with like two flats or what some of these, you know, modern duplexes could look like, you know, a lot of them you can't tell. You can't even tell in certain neighborhoods if is that a single family home or is that a duplex? I mean, because it's done so well, that it just doesn't jump out. Hey, I'm a duplex. It's done really nicely. In a lot of these neighborhoods, and you literally drive by and you can't tell the difference.
There's already a bunch of them on the Madison side of Parmenter going south and like Fortune Road.
Yeah, like across from the Nitty Gritty,
Yep.
that area.
I live on Whittlesey Road, and just south of me on Chickahawk, there are a bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really nice looking products over there. So, all right, does somebody want to make a motion?
This is Ben. Since I haven't been in video the whole time, I'm happy. I don't know if I can, but I'm happy to. So I'll make a motion that the single family residential low density, single family residential medium density, single family residential high density, and for all three of those, we allow conditional use, add conditional use for duplex, twin house, and twin flat. Like, capture that right?
I think that does.
Yeah.
So it would be a 9 boxes over there with a conditional category. So any other discussion on that motion that Ben brought? Okay, we need a second.
I'll second that motion.
So Randy is seconding. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, that motion passes as well. Okay. Anything else in this matrix that is popping out that might have been talked about earlier that we didn't really visit in detail enough? I really like the discussion that's been having here. So I mean, it's important.
So I think one thing that Lisa had brought up before was that it's not in this matrix, but in the multifamily residential low density, so right here, oops, that dwelling units per acre was up to 8. And I believe for single family high density, it was 14. So that was something that you had all wanted to discuss a little, I think.
And Daphne, can you are you able to bring up the allowable densities for the multifamily low, medium, and urban?
I can just bring up each page one by one.
Yeah.
But I believe multifamily residential is the only, or single and multifamily are the only ones that show those densities. So I can bring those up.
Yeah.
And Daphne, while you're bringing that up, I'll just suggest it might be useful to have a table showing the different densities and minimum lot sizes for those workshops when they happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, the grid has been our favorite so far this evening. And Lisa, was your idea that just that low density multifamily unit just doesn't have enough units to maybe even make sense in the zoning code?
Well, that could be. I mean, I didn't say that, and it wasn't my idea to propose that. I was talking very specifically about a narrow band on that one
Allen
parcel on Allen Boulevard.
Yeah.
If we have avenue mixed use along Allen Boulevard and high density residential along the lake, why would we put a much lower density right
Yeah,
between
like
those
split
two?
the difference at least with the medium designation on that Allen Boulevard property.
Yes.
Again, I'd like to see what those densities are.
Okay, so I just went through, so single family high was 14 units. Two family duplex was 8, two family flats was 10. This one is multifamily residential low is 8. Multifamily residential medium is 20.
Yeah, we definitely need the grid for this one.
Urban is 50. And I believe there's one more. High is 100 for multifamily. So it does kind of bounce around. So with the 2 flats, it's 8 to 10, and then low goes back down to 8.
Are those densities maximums, or are they just anticipated? Because like I know that some of them allow for some very tall buildings as well, so which would exceed those densities, I think, realistically.
Yeah, well, in this language it says up to, but then it also says approximate. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, that's a really good point, Randy and Daphne. That's probably something that needs to be, and maybe it's already in the language part of the zoning code, but it needs to be really clear what these, what this intent is and whether it has any force.
Right, because we've got setback requirements and building height limitations. And we have lot coverage limits. And then we also have this approximate density. But if you were to take a look at setbacks and heights, the approximate densities are not consistent with that. And I'm not sure which is overriding. When we were talking about in the land use discussion, I kind of started into the zoning and talked about how I thought that the multifamily low densities at 8 units an acre was too low, and so I would suggest that we take a look at increasing that maybe up to where the single family high density is, at least 12 units an acre. And the medium density, I think, could be perhaps increased to something closer to 24 or 30 units per acre without really negatively impacting the surrounding uses.
Do we want to summarize that for a motion?
Yes.
All right.
I'd move to increase the approximate gross densities of the multifamily low from 8 units per acre to 14 units per acre to be consistent with the single family high density. To increase the multifamily medium from 20 to 24 units per acre, just to accommodate additional dwelling units.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Randy. Was it just those two changes, Randy, in your motion?
Yes.
Any discussion on that motion? Okay, do we have a second?
I can second Randy's motion.
Okay, Alan seconds. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, that motion also carries. Thank you.
And Lisa, with the Allen Boulevard property, do you think we should recommend medium with those? Given that we're recommending kind of 12 units per acre increased density with the multifamily low now?
I'm not sure if it's appropriate for us to take a look at specific parcels now or not. Daphne, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I believe right now, since that specific property isn't up for discussion, we're just
Okay.
talking about the ordinance itself. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
The other, if I could, I'd like to just open up a discussion about one other item, and that's the the mixed use neighborhood. Could we take a look at that?
Sure.
Zoning district.
I can find it. Okay, I have it up.
Yes, thank you. So again, the mixed use neighborhood district shows at 10 dwelling units per acre, which I think needs to be increased. And I think also the building height should be increased. I think the building height was 2 stories with the conditional use to go to 3.
It's maximum building height of 36 feet. So that's about three stories.
And is it allowed to go to 4 stories or not?
No, it is not.
What can you show us where our mixed use neighborhood
Sure.
districts are on the map?
Yeah, so right now, I believe the only 2 places we have it is Parmenter, around Lee Street. So this is where Paul's Bar is, if you're familiar with that. And then, you know, between Lee and North Avenue. So this kind of like darker pinkish color. And then down here, there's two properties here. I believe that's like Aries Green, Park Green. If you're familiar with that. And then the other location is over here, by where it says Historic Pheasant Branch Crossing District. And these are, I believe the one furthest to the left here is the Stamp House, and the 2 properties next to the Stamp House.
Can I ask, is it just me or is Daphne breaking up a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. It might be my internet. Were you?
Yeah, you broke up a bit.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I think just review what was up in that Pheasant Branch Crossing District.
Yeah, so this is where the Stam, or it's like 1847 at the Stam House, that restaurant is. And then the 2 properties next to it. And then along Parmenter right here. So those are the only 2 places.
I know in previous meetings, that whole Parmenter area, I think, is where we think certainly more density could or should be, given the development in the downtown area. So, yeah, I think 4 stories there might, I'd go for that as a recommendation.
So is that a recommendation for the mixed use neighborhood in general, or?
I think what I had wanted to do is just see what everybody else's thoughts were on allowing the mixed use neighborhood to accommodate more dwelling units and perhaps a higher, a taller structure. I think the 36 feet for permitted makes sense, and having a conditional use to allow for another story would make some sense. Again, it would be similar to our discussions on the single family zoning. And the densities, I would think, in the mixed use should be at least at a bare minimum what would be allowed in the multifamily low, and I would suggest that we'd want to try to push it up to more towards multifamily medium density.
Daphne, do you know, I can't believe I don't remember this because I drive past them all the time. What's the height of the Stagecoach and the Beaverbrook? Used to be Broad Branch.
Yeah.
The B square.
Yeah. I believe both of them are 4 stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Randy, do you have a specific motion?
Yeah, let me go back to, can you help me out, Daphne, and give me the densities again for the mixed use neighborhood.
Yes.
Right now, and the 10 dwelling units an acre. Okay. Sure, I'll make a motion to suggest that the mixed use neighborhood zoning district allow up to 24 dwelling units per acre and a 4th story as a conditional use.
I have one question about
And Daphne, and I'd also suggest that we put adjacent to that 36 feet height limit, that we put 3 stories or 36 feet.
Yeah.
for unit density. If we have, just because I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 kids for 6 months and wanted to die. Do the unit densities account for a number of bedrooms that we have in these units? Because if we want like families to live in higher density units, like it's not going to work in 2-bedroom apartments. Like, so do we, is increasing the density negatively impacting the number of bedrooms and space that we have and permitting these?
Not necessarily. At least in my mind, I don't think so. I think it just gives the option. Perhaps we're, perhaps a mix of unit sizes is allowed, and I don't think we're saying anything about making sure that all the units are small or large, just allowing for more units in a particular building or area.
Can I ask about Randy's motion? So if an extra of some 3 stories is the permitted height and a 4th story as a conditional use height, what about the affordable housing additional story? Would
Well,
that go ahead?
Yeah, I did not take that into account. So that's a good point.
Does the affordable housing cut across all those?
Yeah, so last meeting when we discussed that
Yeah.
height, addition, that would apply to all, I believe, multiplexes, apartments, mixed use buildings, those types. So any of those uses, and those are allowed in this mixed use, the developer can do that affordable housing kind of density bonus where they can exceed the height by 1 story.
Yeah, and Randy, we had talked about how right now, the conditional use permitting for heights gives all the developers a way to not really entertain the affordable housing conditional use or affordable housing height extension. So
Yeah.
I think where we'd want to cut out the height conditional uses and push more towards the add affordable units and add your height. Go for it.
So is that across the board, all the multifamily or mixed use districts to get the additional height would require affordable housing or sustainability features?
So there's two ways kind of to get that additional height. Some of the zoning districts have, you can get a conditional use permit to go up, 1 to 2 floors. And then I believe it's like specifically in like the mixed use avenue district, they can go from 5 to 7 with a conditional use permit, or the developer can do an additional height with the affordable housing, and then they can also get a second additional height if they exceed our stormwater requirements. And so those are two separate ways where they can add height to the building.
Well, Lisa, you make a really good point about, we want to incentivize the building heights or incentivize affordable housing and with this bonus height. Same would go with the sustainability features. So right now, it's not clear to me, even what Daphne just said, it's not clear to me that the bonus stories that you get are additive, or are they just limited to one? And in all the, we have multifamily urban, I think, goes from 5 to conditional use to get to 7 stories. Is that just by the bonus features only? I guess that's what we have to maybe drill down on a little bit closer.
Yeah, so there is it does need clarification, which I also added a little bit of language into our packet to talk about the conditional heights. But there are, I believe, sustainability committee is kind of discussing additional ways, like the sustainability features. If they do a net zero building, could they be allowed, an additional height as well to exceed? And then, at that point, then would we allow 3 additional stories? And so that kind of seems like a lot to add, especially to like a mixed use neighborhood next to a single family home. So all of that is still up for discussion. I think right now staff, we're leaning towards, if we do allow these extra, sustainability density bonuses as well, we would cap it to maybe 2 stories. But that's just, our staff recommendation at this time. And then I also added in the packet, these were some communities that have, some additional conditions, if they wanted to, have a conditional use for added height, they have these additional conditions. So a lot of them deal with, extra setbacks from, single family homes, kind of similar to what our code has. And then, a lot of them have, it has to be within the overall character of, the neighborhood as well. So it has to fit with the character. And then, we could have a discussion on, maybe we don't want to allow these other, conditional use heights, and, they have to go through this build, the affordable housing or the stormwater or net zero in order to get that additional height. So that is also an option that is on the table, I think.
That's a simple motion. I'd like to make it, but I know it's not. So,
Okay. So
how do
let me.
we want to crack that egg?
What I think I'm going to do, let me revise my motion, because I had made a motion about the mixed use neighborhood district having a density, I'd like to just limit it to the density and not the height right now.
I'll second that motion, Randy.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Randy, seconded by Alan. Any discussion on that?
Can Daphne, can you repeat the motion? What's the density change?
Yes, so it is revising the mixed use neighborhood density from 12 or from 10 dwelling units per acre to 24 dwelling units per acre.
Okay. And can you scroll down to see, because I'm searching for the building height may exceed, you know, your memo says that for that affordable housing height exception is listed under apartments, multiplex, and townhouse for the residential land uses, and also for the mixed use building land use regulations. But I'm only finding it in the multifamily residential. I'm not finding it in mixed use.
Yes, so that is in, I believe, we're in Article 2, which has all these, you know, the setbacks and, you know, the heights, permitted uses. And then in Article 3, it kind of expands on all of those. So
I just think if it's showing up specifically in the footnotes or the notes for the 3 multifamily residential zoning districts, it should also show up in the, like, it should either show up in the notes for all districts where it's permitted or a conditional use, or it shouldn't show up anywhere except in the Article 2. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So yeah, that I think is a good clarification, because yeah, right now you wouldn't really know that there is the height exception unless you scrolled all the way through Article 3 and you saw here in the live work building and just in general under mixed use buildings. So all of the uses under mixed use building, they just have the same copy and pasted language for the height exceptions. And this is the language that we reviewed at the last meeting. So sorry, I think we were in the middle of voting though for the
Yeah, so we have a
yeah.
Who made the motion? Was it Alan made the motion?
Randy and Alan
Randy made the
seconded
motion,
on
seconded
the
by
10 to
Alan.
24.
Okay, so any final discussion before we call the vote? All right, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, the motion carries as well.
Okay, so all the additional height is in this Article 3.
So for the height exceptions, they're all kind of listed under each land use. So like mixed use building, live work building, and then up here in residential, some of them, I believe, townhouse and apartments. Yeah, this one is townhouse, has this. And so these are the height exceptions that we have right now, which is the stormwater and affordable housing. And then back in Article 2, if you go to like the mixed use avenue district, in here, it'll say, you know, principal height 60 feet or 5 stories. Oh, it's actually not in that. Let me find where it is. Okay, it's actually in, so this is multifamily residential high density. And it has a maximum principal building height of 60 feet or 5 stories. And then the double asterisk down here says building height may exceed 60 feet or 5 stories up to 120 feet or 10 stories with a conditional use permit.
And and do the conditional use permit, does that, I guess again, I'd want to understand if that means that to get those additional floors, do you have to do the affordable housing or other
The way
features?
this is written now, no. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, I think if we really are wanting to incentivize affordable housing, then we need to
Yeah.
make that a requirement to get the additional floor. If they can get the additional floor without it, that's what they're going to do.
I agree.
And
Although I suspect the sustainability committee right now is probably considering sustainability features as the way to get that additional floor.
And I'm okay with that too. I'm okay with the developer having a choice. Like to get additional height, I have to do a certain level of sustainability, or I have to do affordable housing,
or both.
or both, right?
Okay, so to make that happen, we'd have to remove the conditional use just on this particular item or the rest of the residential items.
Yeah, I believe it's on, I don't remember exactly which ones it is in, but I believe it's multifamily high and then urban and then maybe medium also has that conditional use permit. So you could just, say anywhere where there's an additional conditional use
Yeah,
permit.
so I'm gonna propose that we remove the conditional use height for all residential properties. I think we can replace the footnote specifically with mentions of the sustainability or affordability programs.
And Alan, is that the multifamily and mixed use districts? The mixed.
I think wherever we find the conditional use for the height extensions, we would replace it with the sustainability and affordability.
Yep, it shows up on pages 44, 46, and 48. Daphne's right, it's the medium, urban, and high density multifamily.
Okay.
I'm also, well, that's a pretty basic motion, but I'm wondering if we need to consider anything like is it possible to double the height of one of these buildings with the sustainability and affordability, or do we need to modify those recommendations to allow for it? Because I think if somebody wants to build a 10-story residential building, I think, yeah, they should do it, but with the sustainability and the affordability.
So you're allowed, you'd say you'd get a bonus story for sustainability and a bonus story for affordability?
Yeah, well, 2 each, I guess.
Well, yeah. I can't support that.
Randy, you can't support one story for sustainability and one for affordable. You think it should be either or?
Well, I mean, I thought what he said was 2 each for a total of 4 bonus stories is what I kind of understood. I couldn't support that.
Right. What I'm trying to figure out is we have conditional use here for a 10-story building. And if we remove this conditional use, the max we would get is 7. If they did both.
Right. So in this multifamily high density,
No.
they could get a CUP for basically doubling the height. But if we only do with building it with the height exceptions, then it would only go up to 7.
Randy, could you support an additional 4 stories for this very specific zoning designation? What is it again, Daphne? It's the multifamily or the
This is high density. Yeah.
multifamily residential high?
I agree. 2 each on the low and medium would be too much. But for this one, it seems like we're trying to go big on the development size.
Let me see where this, where the high density is. Where would these potential 10-story buildings be?
I believe right now, the city is Middleton Shores because that was part of their plan development, conditional of approval. And then Castle Rock, I think those are the only 2. The ones here are urban. Yeah.
Daphne, you're cutting in and out a little bit.
Sorry, it might just because I'm like moving the map and stuff
Okay.
too.
You sound great right now. So yeah, it's all good.
So,
Okay, yeah.
Daphne, can you repeat that, please? What the locations are of these multifamily high?
Yeah, so right now it is only Middleton Shores and Castle Rock. And those were included as part of their, plan development,
Right.
rezoning,
Right.
contingency. So yeah, right now it's only those 2 locations.
So Lisa, getting back to your question, I couldn't support the ability of getting up to 10 stories on those 2 locations.
Well, so that sounds like a change. I mean, right now, that is what the conditional use permit would allow, is up to 10 stories. And what Alan is suggesting would take it down to 9, correct? Because it's 5 stories permitted with an additional potentially 4. Is 9 too much, Randy?
Well, I mean, in my mind, yes, it is. I was
For those areas?
Yeah, those areas. I think it's just too much.
Yeah.
Now, and now if we're using, if we're looking at west of the Beltline, no, that's not too high.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are some, that's all PDD, which
Right.
kind of makes this confusing because there are taller buildings out there.
Yeah. Right. But we have nowhere else to.
Daphne, since those 2 parcels are the only ones and they've already gotten approval for a particular height, is there, does that lessen the possibility that they would try to get to 9 stories?
Right, yeah, so they're basically limited to what they have. If they needed to, if they wanted to rework their whole development proposal, I guess after the zoning ordinance, that could be a possibility.
Right.
They would still have to, at this time, still go through that conditional use permit again, in order to get that additional height. Another way to look at it is, instead of, I believe the motion was to remove the CUP for height, and then just replace the text with the building exceptions. One way to look at it is, in order for them to get the building, the additional height, they have to get, a condition of approval for the CUP is to have, the affordable housing and, stormwater and, sustainability features. So, instead of just kind of swapping it out, it would just be, as a condition of approval, you have to do, at least, these things to get the additional height, if that makes sense.
So more like a general motion to make that, because I feel like the staff know the draft zoning code rewrite in and out. And maybe the motion just needs to be, stating the policy preference of having that additional height be tied to affordability, stormwater, or sustainability features. possibly additive depending on the specific zoning district.
I would support that, Lisa.
Okay, so how do I say that? Motion to add the affordability, sustainability, and stormwater management programs to all residential conditional use permitting for height.
Yeah, as conditions of approval, I think
Yeah.
that would, yeah.
Yeah, and then if we could just emphasize that we want to encourage the additional height or encourage affordability and sustainability features is by bonusing the height.
So in other words, the only way to get the additional height would be to to include either affordable housing or the sustainability features, including stormwater.
Mhm.
Just want to make that clear. Yep. Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Alan. It was clarified by Randy. Any other discussion on that? Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Lisa will second. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? That motion carries as well.
This has been really great discussion, you guys. This is a
I
hot
was just thinking the same thing. This is
We go-
very nice.
We go from 0 to 12
Yeah,
real quick on these
100.
meetings.
Yeah.
So, Crystal, our meetings are normally like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's
You
been
got the
relatively
marathon.
relatively quiet, so please do not be terrified of this particular meeting. I mean, it's all really good stuff. It's important stuff, and it's great that our committee is being engaged in everything that we're trying to help the city navigate with. So.
Those are all the topics I had pointed out specifically, I think. So if anyone else has any other comments on zoning ordinance, I'm happy to discuss, or we can move on.
Yeah, I did notice that there are parking requirements. We didn't get to that
Oh,
section.
you did not just go there.
I think we need to eliminate parking.
How about a wheel tax?
As a workforce housing committee trying to maximize density, we gotta eliminate parking requirements.
I'll tell you, that is something that came up on the Ped Bike and Transit Committee meeting as well. The idea of eliminating minimum parking requirements and leaving it up to the builders to determine what works, given their business model. You know, maybe there could be a building that doesn't offer parking and people will flock there. But yeah, that was a discussion point.
I mean, I'd be on board with it.
Maybe we'll save it for the next meeting.
I
Just a
think
bike rack.
it
That's a
needs to
minimum
be
parking.
decided now because the zoning code will be moving forward with the workshops and everything.
Do I hear a motion from you, Sam?
Can I make a motion to consider eliminating minimum parking requirements in new developments?
In new housing developments or new mixed use developments or all developments?
I think in all developments.
I'd make a friendly amendment that it would pertain to all housing and mixed use developments.
Oh, right. Yep, got it. Housing and mixed use development. So, so.
Not
commercial-
necessarily commercial developments and so, yeah.
Okay. So should I restate that mix to, or motion to eliminate parking requirements in new residential housing developments?
And mixed use developments.
And mixed use developments, thanks.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, we would need a second.
I'll second it.
Alan's is going to second Sam's motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks for bringing that up, Sam.
No problem.
I hope that we've made some suggested changes that I think are all good changes. I just hope that we haven't overreached, but we will find out.
Well, if nothing else, I mean, it is the role of our committee is to offer recommendations, and
That's right.
ultimately the plan commission will have lots to talk about.
Yeah, we'll still have to show.
I don't think we need to be shy about making recommendations. I mean, that's why we're on this committee, and whether we make half step forwards or 3 steps forward, that's really up to the plan commission, I guess.
It's a good point, Darren. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we're on this committee. So I don't have a problem, expressing the views of our committee and letting it go up the chain and see what happens. Anything else? Okay. Is anything else on the agenda, Daphne? That's it.
That was our last agenda.
Motion to close.
We have a motion. How about a second? I'm going to second that. Can I second it? I'll second that. All right. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This has been really good discussion. And yeah, Crystal, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you, and thanks for your input so far. And we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Yeah. Thank you, Crystal.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
you.